When I was a little boy, I had an Aunt Margaret who thought a good idea for a Christmas present for a little boy is underpants. I don't even mean fancy boxer shorts or underoos or anything cool like that with Superman on them. I mean just plain old whitey tighties. She gave me whitey tighties for Christmas presents. I don't know, maybe she did it because she knew that I like to read. And she figured any little boy who liked to read probably wore out a lot of underpants. Squirming around in a chair or something. I don't know why she did it. But I do know I did like to read when I was a little boy. I remember the library in our elementary school. It wasn't even a real library room. It was just like a fourth grade classroom that they put bookshelves around three of the walls, the walls that didn't have blackboards. And they put the books on those shelves. And the only time you could go in there and even check out a book was when the fourth grade class wasn't in there, like during their recess or lunchtime or before school or after school or something like that. But even by the time I reached fourth grade, I'd spent a lot of time in that room checking out books. I remember that I loved a book called Horton Hatches an Egg by Dr. Seuss. I bet by the time I got to the fourth grade, I had read that book 100 times. It's this story of this bird named Maisie who was lazy and didn't want to spend time sitting on her nest and hatching her egg, so she asks this elephant to step in and take her place for a while, and poor old Horton climbs up in the tree and he sits on the egg and he's waiting for Maisie to come back, but Maisie is not coming back because she's gone to Palm Beach to play. I loved that book. We had a real library in our hometown, Talladega, Alabama. It was in a great big old square building made out of stone and bricks and cement, had brick steps going up to the front door, and then when you walked in the door, you walked over a little area of marble floor where your shoes just click, click, clicked on the marble, and you could hear that echoing all throughout the room. And all around the edges of the room were bookshelves against the wall and coming out into the room. And above the height of the bookshelves, there were windows that opened all the way up to the ceiling, which was about 3 stories above. But it was all open and airy and light and full of books. Right in front of the door, ahead of you, was a big wooden desk. And that's where Willie Welch ran the library. She ran that library inside and outside. Willie Welch loved dandelions. Now at my house, dandelions were considered a weed. They put out these nice little green leaves that lie flat on the ground, and they have these pretty little sunburst blossoms that appear in the middle of it. And then they put up this stalk with these seeds on it, and it was fun for kids to blow those seeds. Sometimes they even said you could make a wish on them. But my daddy said, you don't ever blow dandelion seeds in our yard because that's just making more weeds. But Willie Welch loved dandelions, and she loved for the kids walking by the library to pick the dandelions on the lawn of the library and blow the seeds, and there were more and more dandelions as the summer went on. People like my daddy would complain about how bad it looked, but it didn't matter because Willie Welch ran the library inside and outside. Now, inside the library, Willie Welch didn't seem to know what to do with children quite as well as she did on the outside. She had them build a little room over in one corner of the library, and that's where she put all the children's books. And that's where, whenever a child came in the library, the child was expected to go. Which was fine with me up to a point, because there were lots of books in there that I enjoyed, books about, dinosaurs and books with big pictures of trains and things like that. But I reached a point where I was interested in other things, like Africa. Oh, I don't mean the real Africa. I mean the Africa that I saw in the Tarzan movies on Sunday afternoon on television. The Africa where Tarzan swang through the trees on vines and wrestled crocodiles under the water and things like that. I wanted books of African adventures, and there weren't any books like that in the children's room. Well, my mama said, I know a book you might like. It's called King Solomon's Mines. It's by H. Rider Haggard. And the next time we went to the library, we went over to the card catalog and looked that book up. And my mama said, yes, they have it. It's over in the fiction area, and she pointed to the far side of the library. She said, all of the books are arranged alphabetically by author. This author's name is Haggard, so you need to go over and look for the H's and see if you can find this book. And she went off and looked for a book of her own. Well, I started across the library toward the area called fiction. And all of a sudden, Willie Welch came swooping out from behind that desk and stopped me. She said, wait, where are you going? You don't belong over there. You belong in the children's library. She said, there are no books over there that you can read. The books over there are too big and they don't have pictures. Well, I told you could hear footsteps echoing all over that library. You could also hear Willie Welch telling me I didn't belong in the fiction section all over that library too. And my mama was nothing like Maisie the lazy bird. She came to my rescue. She told Willie Welch, I sent him over there. There's a book he's interested in, and he's old enough to read it. And Willie Welch immediately started apologizing. She said, oh, I just don't like for the children to go over there behind those stacks where I can't see them because sometimes they do things they shouldn't, like, rearrange the books and get them out of order and things like that. But if you said it was all right, I guess it's all right. And I went over there and I found that book. And I brought it back to the big desk in the middle of the room. And Willie Welch looked at it, and she looked at me, and she said, you won't finish this book. It's too big for you, and it doesn't have pictures. But she stamped it anyway. It was due back in 2 weeks. And I took it home. And you know what? Willie Welch was wrong. 2 ways. First of all, she was wrong about that book not having pictures. Oh, it didn't have the kind of pictures that, you could see just by opening up the pages. But as I read that book, I could see the jungles of Africa. I could see the safari moving across the plains and the zebras racing off in the distance. I could smell the dust. I could feel the earth shake as the elephants stampeded. I saw all those pictures. She was also wrong about me finishing the book. When I took that book back to her 2 weeks later, I laid it up on her desk and I said, I finished that book. And Willie Welch looked at me and her whole face changed. She smiled and she said, oh, you're one of my children. And after that, Willie Welch kept a list of books she thought I might enjoy. Wasn't too long after that a Christmas came along, and there was a present under the tree from my Aunt Margaret, and it didn't look a thing like underpants. It was way too big and hard for underpants, and when I opened it on Christmas morning, it was a set of 6 books by Mark Twain. I had Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, Pudd'nhead Wilson, The Prince and the Pauper, and Roughing It Volumes 1 and 2. And inside of each book was a little sticker that said, Welch's Bookstore. You see, Willie Welch also sold books out of her home. And Willie Welch was my Aunt Margaret's friend. And Willie Welch was my friend too. And because of that, I started getting better Christmas presents.